Good morning, everyone. My name is Princess Kim Montoya, and I will be discussing about the global economy, economic globalization, and global trade. First, what is global economy? Global economy refers to the combined economic activities of all countries around the world. It means that nations are connected and depend on one another for products, services, and technology. For example, the Philippines exports fruits and imports oil, while many overseas Filipino workers earn money abroad and send remittances back home. Today's world is linked through international trade, online business, and technology. So when one country's economy changes, others are affected as well. The United Nations created the 8 Millennium Development Goals in the 1990s to solve global problems. These goals included eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, achieve universal primary education, promote gender equality and empower women, reduce child mortality, improve maternal health,
and combat HIV/AIDS, malaria, and other diseases, ensure environment sustainability, develop a global partnership for development. First, eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, reduce at least by the half of proportion of men, women, and children of all ages living in a poverty in all its dimensions according to national definitions. And the second, achieve universal primary education to ensure that by 2015, children everywhere, boys and girls alike, will be able to complete a full course of primary schooling. And the third one, promote gender equality and empower women. Build a society in which women and men share equality and distribution of power and influence and have equal access to education, health, decent work, and livelihoods. The fourth is reduce child mortality and preventable death of newborn and children under 5 years of age. Improve maternal health. Target 5A aim for a 75% reduction in the global maternal mortality ratio, and 5B aim for achieve universal access to reproductive health. 6 is combat HIV/AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. This goal is one of the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, which is aimed to reduce the spread of impact of major diseases affecting millions of people around the world. 7. Ensure environment sustainability, which is focuses on protecting the environment and ensuring that natural resources are used responsibly so that future generations can live in a healthy and safe world. And the last one is develop a global partnership for development.
There are two different types of economies associated with economic globalization, the protectionism and trade liberalization. What is protectionism? Protectionism is an economic policy where a government protects its local industries and businesses by limiting or controlling foreign trade. This is usually done by adding tariffs or taxes on imported goods, setting quotas or limits on how much can be imported, giving special support to local producers so they can compete with foreign companies. The goal of this is to encourage people to buy local products and help domestic industry grow. While trade liberalization is an economic policy that aims to make trade between countries freer and easier by removing or reducing barriers such as taxes or tariffs, quotas, and restrictions on imported and exported goods. The goal of this is to encourage international trade, increase competition, and give consumers more choices at lower prices. The example of this is if two countries agree to trade freely, products like clothes, phones, or food can move between them without high taxes or limits. This helps businesses grow and allows people to buy cheaper goods.
So, proceed the next topic. The topic is environmental degradation and cause and effect. So, environmental degradation is a decay the environment route and reduction to resources such as quality of air and water. So, types of environment degradation is land soil degradation, water and atmospheric degradation, various other and kind of pollution. And cause and effect of degradation, one is overpollution, two is pollution and land disturbance and landfills and natural causes. So effect and degradation is ozone layer, population, economic impact human health, and loss of biodiversity, loss for the industry. That's my report is.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maris Espinosa, and today I will be discussing the food security and economic globalization, poverty, and inequality. Now, let's tackle first the food security. What is food security? Food security means that all people at all times, physical, social, and economic access to enough safe and nutritious food to live a healthy and active life. For example, when a community has enough rice, vegetables, and fish available at the local markets, and people can afford to buy them. Also, there are four pillars of the food security. The first one is the availability. Availability means it refers to enough food. Second is the access. Access is to ability of people to buy or obtain food. Next is the utilization. Utilization refers to the proper use of food, like cleanliness, nutritious, and health. So the last is the stability. Stability is continuous of ability of the food even there is a crisis or disaster. So now let's proceed to economic globalization, poverty, and inequality. Now, what is economic globalization, poverty, and inequality? Economic globalization is the process where countries become more connected through trade, investment, and the exchange of goods, services, and technology. However, poverty is kakulangan sa pangunahing pangangailangan, while the inequality is hindi pantay na contribution ng yaman. When some countries or people benefit more than others. For example, big companies from rich countries invest in poor countries to get a cheap labor. This creates jobs, but sometimes the workers are underpaid, leading to inequality. So, in short, economic globalization connects economies, and poverty means it happens when people can make their basic needs. And the last is the inequality. It means it occurs when resources are unevenly shared between the rich and the poor. And that is the economic globalization, poverty, and inequality.
Everyone, my name is Fairy Queen Bitanggapen, and Now let's proceed to my topic, global income inequality and the third world and the global south. So first is global income inequality. Global income inequality refers to the unequal distribution of wealth and income among countries and people. It shows how rich nations, global north, reach to get richer while poor nations, global south, struggle to improve. So, global income inequality means the unequal distribution of money and wealth in the world. Some countries are very rich, which is global north, while others are still poor, which is global south. So, there are the two types of inequality. First is wealth inequality, and the second is income inequality. Wealth inequality, difference in total assets of resources of a country, means the difference in how much kaptangan or assets or resources people or countries have. For example, some countries or families have a lot of properties, business or saving, while others have very little or none. So, income inequality, difference in how much money people or countries earn, means the difference in how much kwarta people earn. Like, some people have high-paying jobs or business, while others only earn a small amount of money every month. Because of the Industrial Revolution and globalization, rich countries became more advanced and more countries were left behind. That's why we say the rich become richer and the poor remain poor. And now, let's move on to the third world and the global south. The terms of first world, second world, and the third world came from the Cold War, diving nations by power and economy. First world, rich industrialized countries like the US and the Western Europe. Second world, communist and socialist countries like the Soviet Union. And the third world, poor developing nations. So, the first world are the rich and developing countries. These countries are already industrialized, meaning they have many factories, advanced technology, and strong economies. Examples are the United States and the countries in Western Europe. And the second world are countries that follow communism or socialism, like before the Soviet Union, Russia, and the other communist country. They are not as rich as first world countries, but not as poor as the third either. The third world are the developing or poor countries. These countries are still improving their economy and industries. Many of them are in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. These terms are replaced with Global North, developed countries, and the Global South, developing countries. The Global North includes the US, Canada, Europe, and developed parts of Asia. Global South includes Latin America, Africa, South Asia, and other poorer regions. But now, we don't use these words anymore. We use Global North for rich or developed countries, and Global South for poor or developing countries. This new classification focuses more on economic inequality and development, showing how the world remains divided between wealthy and less developed nations. So, the Global North includes the US, Canada, Europe, and Japan, countries that are rich and successful. The Global South includes Africa, Latin America, and Asia, countries that are still improving and need more progress. And that's all.
And now, let us proceed in the theories of stratisfaction. It explains why some nations are rich and powerful while the other remain poor and underdeveloped. Sociologists have developed several theories to explain these global inequalities. For much of human history, all of the societies on Earth were poor. Poverty was the norm for everyone, but obviously, that is not the case anymore. Just as you find satisfaction among socioeconomic classes within a society like Philippines, you would also see across the world a pattern of global satisfaction with inequalities in wealth and powerful between the societies. And modernization theory suggests that poor countries remain underdeveloped because they have not yet adopted the modern practices, technologies, and the cultural values that wealthy nations have. According to this view, development happens when nations move from the traditional to modern ways of life, industrializing their economies, improving educations, and embracing innovations. These theories emphasize that internal factors such as education, governance, and social values as the main reasons of poverty. In short, countries can develop if they follow the same path taken by the development of nations. For example, the theory suggested that countries like Japan and South Korea they developed because they adopted the Western style industrializing and education system. And the world offers those four stages of modernization. According to him, modernization in the West took place at is always in four stages. First, the traditional stage. This refers to societies that are structured around small, local communities with the production typically being not in family settings. Because these societies have limited resources and technology, most of their time spent on laboring to produce food, which creates a strict social hierarchy. Second, preconditions for takeoff. Societies begin to develop the conditions needed for industrialization. And the third one is drive to maturity. The economy becomes diverse and self-sustaining. And the last stage is known as high mass consumptions. It is when your country is big enough that production becomes more about wants than needs. Many of these countries put social support system in place to ensure that all of their citizens have access to basic necessities.
Hi everyone! Today we're going to explore a theory called dependency theory and how it helps us understand the challenges faced by Latin America and its development. This theory gained prominence in the 1960s and 1970s. So, what is dependency theory? Dependency theory explains that the poverty and underdevelopment of some countries are a direct result of the wealth and development of other countries. It divides the world into two categories, the core and the periphery. Key thinkers like Andre Gunder Frank, 1966, argued that underdeveloped was not an original state but a product of historical processes. Now let's talk about the core and the periphery. The core consists of wealthy industrialized nations, while the periphery is made up of less developed countries. Dependency theories argues that the core actively exploits the periphery, preventing it from developing its own industry and becoming self-sufficient. This exploitation can take many forms, including unfair trade practices and political interference. For critiques and conclusion about the dependency theory and Latin America's dependency theory some say it focuses too much on external factors and not enough on internal international framework for understanding global inequality and challenges faced by developing countries. It reminds us that the world isn't fixed and that the history of dependency theory highlights the importance of addressing structural inequalities in the global. And that's our topic, dependency theory and Latin American experiences. Now, let's move on to my second topic, and that is theory called modern world system, which help us understand how the global economy is structured. This theory was developed by Emanuel Wallerstein with his seminal work published in 1974. So, what is modern world system? The modern world system is developed by Emanuel Wallerstein, divides the world into three categories: the core, the periphery, and the semi-peri. It's important to know that this is a dynamic system and countries can move between categories over time. Now, let's talk about each categories. First is the core. These are the wealthy, industrialized nations and that dominate the global economy. They are characterized by high levels of technology, skilled labor, and capital. Core countries control global finance, trade, and technology. They extract profits from the periphery and semi-peri. Examples include the United States, Japan, Germany, and other Western European nations. The next category is periphery. These are less developed countries that provide raw materials, cheap labor, and agricultural products to the core. They are characterized by low levels of technology, unskilled labor, and limited capital. Periphery countries are often exploited by the core through unfair trade practices and foreign investment. Examples include many countries in Africa, Latin America, and parts of Asia. And that's the end of my report. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you learned something about the two topics I discussed.